In response to the floods in Maiduguri, Borno State, caused by the collapse of Alau Dam, the United Nations and humanitarian organizations have pledged immediate support to displaced victims. This was stated in a press release that was made available to journalists on Sunday by the National Information Officer of the UN Information Center, Oluseyi. Alright, and then on UN resident and humanitarian coordinator Mohammed Fall led a delegation to assess the damage and meet with government officials, including Borno State Governor Professor Babagana Zulum. The floods have severely impacted food security, with over 125,000 hectares of farmland destroyed. And then the UN has allocated $6 million from the Nigerian Humanitarian Fund to provide essentials like food, water, and shelter. Governor Zulum expressed gratitude for the aid, but the humanitarian response remains underfunded, with only 46% of the required $927 million secured. Okay, the talks on the Borno State flood, the Maiduguri flood, has been something else right from the inception. Even though our hearts go out to the people who are affected, the victims, a lot of talks have been there about funds being, invested, or should I say distributed to the people. But then let's get your thoughts on this one, Charles. What is your take on the UN's urgent response?
It's good for the UN or bodies to come to arrest when they can do assess. Well, this going tapping happens to some of these bodies, and that's why we are typing the electron strings. We can bring every little opportunity will all run over there. It's very simple and it's safety. But again, the challenge of the Borno flooding has not, it's not something that will take us unaware. Over the years, it happened before. What the government do, you see, we always want to react instead of because people have the challenge at hand. What they need to do, you always know how to even look at it, invent it instead of for purity, you go for preventive instead of purity. But the government, and I suppose I am quite, I want to be also convincing so that some of these acts may not be far away from being delivered, because now the clause are here, they are bringing committees and all that. Then money should be voted in, officials, committees will be set up, and people will not to start helping themselves for the fund. So it's not likely that somebody allow this disaster to happen so that people can face on it. Because why would we not prevent something happening? Because remember the time of Alau Dam in the Cameroon, when we had all the southern states and for that time. But I think it's done over the years. Go to local safety, you also find come to Lagos. So I think government, I know that working is not disaster, so and when again can prevent it. You can go to the Netherlands, but not the world country we call world again and Nigeria. Netherlands is the whole country is under above sea level. They are under the sea level. How have they been able to do it to change the water away? All their active water, whatever they were able to push the water away, that the water has not swept the whole Netherlands away. They say that this country go over this country and say whatever mitigate, not totally eradicate. So explain that we set us purpose every year, and government knows that they often they're proactive enough. If it happens, now we need to take donations of capitation and hotels that people today, some of them will not steal. Remember that people were stealing back to price and then rebagging them and then moving them back to the local market. That's exactly what I think. That's why I attempted to be convinced that the right to happen. So some of these unscrupulous criminal officials will have a cost to steal and then reach themselves and help There's a public pump.
You know, Charles, just last week we heard the FG say that this was not as a result of the Alau Dam collapse. That this flood we're talking about was as a result of heavy rainfall. And now the reports we had earlier was that it was because of the Alau Dam collapse, which we got information even beforehand. There was prior notice before that actually happened. But then the federal government coming up last week and telling us that this was as a result of rainfall. I'd like to get your reaction to that report.
That's what I'm saying. I said this, that's why I said I tend to believe that government officials allow this to happen because of the end means. All right? Now, this was the light was because of heavy rainfall, right? And the causes were there, which of course they wanted to hide public knowledge, which of the collapse of the dam. The question I have, they know that usually rainfall, there's sometimes sometimes the year that the bottom of people will increase. Why? What stopped the Minister of Water Resources to turn off that dam? What's compared to the dam, to create a strength, to give it strength, to withstand the body of waters that will to ravage it. They didn't do that. You know that there's a level of water that will attack a facility and you might collapse it. What you should do is to be proactive and sorry that you defend it up, you give it strength to be able to withstand the body of water that will come. But again, they didn't do that. The dam, water now found, that was this theory. Water found this, then began to bring the farmlands and people so can know that. And they were like, so government also they didn't tell us the truth as new prices. Constitution Nigerian government always lie to the citizens. It's not something that is new. We're used to it, and that is certain.
So it means you were actually expecting a reply like that or a response like that from the FG. But let's bring you in, Ambassador. Charles has mentioned the government being reactive instead of being proactive, and this is something that a lot of Nigerians has mentioned, especially regarding this Borno flooding. I'd like to get what problem do you think our federal government has with being proactive?
Well, let me say that at this moment, the focus should be on how to alleviate the suffering of the people of Borno. And let me commend the UN representatives for their swift response. And it's not out of place to seek for help in terms of tragedy. And the UN representative, Baba Mohammed, have done well. Of course, he's a northerner, and then using his office to alleviate the suffering of his people. I don't think it's a bad thing. It's commendable. There are people who would have claimed the ignorance of what is happening and then push blame. The government did not do well. Government would have done. I think it's time to look at how they come out of their pains, first of all. When we are done with how to alleviate them, so I'm calling on other agencies to see how they can assist the people of Borno State to recover from this great loss, and equally encourage the government, the federal government, the state government to continue to see how this loss is being recovered. Now, I don't think that any human being, because they are in position, I know we have bad people, but I equally know that I don't see indigenous or citizens of Borno State who sits in government position, who have buildings, properties in Maiduguri and then other localities of the state. We watch knowing fully well that if they do not do this, that flood will come and wipe away their investment and all of that. I don't really think so. But most of the times, like we know, natural disasters are not things even America can prevent. These are things that is beyond human proactive response.
That's if it's a natural disaster.
Yes.
The Alau Dam collapse, you want to call it a natural disaster?
Well, the two informations you gave us here, you said there is a report that there was a collapse of dam, and there's another report from the federal government that it was the rainfall.
Now you're choosing one of the reports.
So whatsoever that water is a natural disaster. You know,
rainfall is it?
Flooding.
Rainfall.
Yes,
is
it's
a natural disaster. But
and
then when it's a dam collapse, do we still call that a natural disaster?
Now the issue is what made the dam to collapse. It's possible the force of the water. So we cannot be talking about the rebuilding of that dam.
So you think this is something that if it's a dam collapse now, you think it's something that the federal government could not have, or the government in general could not have prevented?
No, if it collapsed, I think what government can do is to make effort to rebuild it.
No, especially when there have been prior notice before the collapse. You think it's something that we could not have handled? When Nigerians are calling for proactivity of government, do you think that it's out of place?
If it was a collapse of the dam, I believe government should have done something. But here is two stories. The government is saying it was not the collapse of the dam. So at this point, I do not want to do a blame game, rather than to say that government should be responsive to the issues that threatens the lives of and properties of our people. So if there was such information and government did nothing, I think it was insensitivity of government. But I think if it was not on that regard, if it was just a natural rainfall that culminated to flooding and have caused that wide erosion in Borno State, I want to say that it's not time for blame game. But in any case, I feel that Nigerians are always saying government always be proactive whenever issues are brought to your notice that threatens the life and properties of your people. So at this point, like I said, it's not time I want to do a blame game, but it's time for me to appeal, and every one of us to appeal to the federal government, to the state government, to philanthropists, to organizations that are charitable in nature. I've seen quite one or two individuals too who have gone to Borno State, to Maiduguri, to see how they can assist. So I think it's time for alleviating these challenges they are going through. Then after this point, we can now be talking about what is the cause, how can we not, how do we prevent this and all of that, because I think it is not a palatable situation for anybody, because I don't even think the governor will be happy, because he's a citizen and indigene of Borno State, and it's one man too that have been trying to see how they can bring development to Borno State.
All right, thank you so much.